Welcome to, let's see, today is March 5th, 2013, and today is our Owners and Executives Training Course for Managed Services. You know, it's been interesting. We've, through this series, been bringing on a lot of new dealers, a lot of you guys listening today, and we're learning a lot from you. And we're also learning a lot from some other experts in the industry as well. And so here's what we're going to do today. With you guys, we're going to talk about the factors of valuation. And we've had a lot of questions lately about contractual language and why don't we do month-to-month contracts and things of that nature. So I thought it would be a good opportunity, as everybody's really kind of establishing their strategy, for us to review the things that you're going to want to analyze and evaluate as you prepare for your business going forward. In the sales meeting today, I want to share some great successes we had last week. We've sold so many different sites last week for a variety of different solutions. And so what I thought I'd do is just share a few of those applications with your sales team so they can see what other people have been selling and what price points they've been selling it at. So it just, you know, helps everybody kind of get a feel for what end users are expecting and what they're adopting. So if you have any sales folks that are available today in 1 hour, I strongly recommend we get them on that call so they can hear about how some of their peers are making it happen. But let's go ahead and dive into today's message. So as usual, we have these weekly discussions to discuss kind of real stories of trial and error and establish some more accountability for myself and integrator support and our partners, as well as for you guys to make sure that you are all staying focused and following this course that you've set out in front of you. The consistency of the weekly communication, just make sure that we all know how time is passing by. I'll tell you that I cannot believe we're already in March. We're already 2 months into 2013, and it just feels like we just got out of the holiday season. So time is going by quickly, folks, and so if you had a plan or a goal to get your RMR ramped up to a certain amount by the end of 2013, you know, you've only got about 10 more months to make it happen. So it's time for us to really crank it out and make sure you're ready to go. And, you know, just again, a level of commitment to the model and making sure that we don't waver. You know, as we set new goals and standards, it's easy to find excuses or, you know, get distracted and, you know, just kind of find a reason why it didn't work out. What's hard is making it actually happen. Extraordinary results do not come from ordinary performance. You have to have an extraordinary work ethic and an extraordinary level of commitment and sacrifice and willingness to make this work to get the extraordinary results that we'll be talking about today. So the message of the day is maximizing the value of your recurring monthly revenue, thus your company, and your future. So we're going to talk about a few different factors. Obviously, there's a lot more than what we're going to talk about that goes into evaluating your specific company. I'll give you a few names of people that, if you're interested in getting sort of an appraisal or just getting some advice as you strategize and, you know, position yourself for growth, we've got some experts that can really support you, and I'll list those people here. So this presentation is really a compilation of what we've learned from deals done in the past, from some of our connections in the industry as far as financiers and people that help make mergers and acquisitions a reality for people, you know, as well as, you know, learning from folks who have done it, like Bill Bozeman, who has built his companies and sold them and built them and sold them and was able to make a great living for himself, but not only that, but a really great company, you know, of value to give to somebody else. So point number one, getting everything in writing and getting those contracts. You know, RMR and the actual revenue that comes in, yeah, it helps. It levels out some of those peaks and valleys. It might allow you to cash flow some projects that otherwise would have seemed unattainable. There's definitely benefits to just that additional cash flow coming through, obviously. But we're talking about valuation today. And the valuation is all based on future contracts, future commitments. When you think about the value of your company or the value of your RMR, what are people evaluating? What are they looking for in an RMR kind of business model? They want to know their sustainability. They want to know that there is going to be a guaranteed amount of revenue coming in. That's what they should expect. So how do we get there? These are the areas that you need to really focus on in your contracts. You know, a lot of this information I learned from a gentleman named Jim Wooster from, actually I should say Jim Wooster Jr. I've never had the pleasure to meet his father. But Jim Wooster is now the president of Alarm Financing, and they specialize in basically purchasing just the contracts. They will help evaluate contracts. They will lend money off of contracts. So what they see as the value of your company is one silo. It's one section of your business. It is strictly the contracted ongoing revenue. Whereas obviously you've got your engineering, you've got all of your processes and procedures and intellectual property and things that you've built and the customer base that you have on the large-scale immigration side. You still have all that. That is still worth something. But you can't necessarily get a lot of loans from banks in a contractor-style type business, which is really essentially what immigration is. And so when you get into this more service-generated kind of business, you know, several business books I've read refer to it as subscription revenue businesses. So we call it managed services, but you know, you're essentially selling a subscription. Somebody is signing up for a period of time to get this service from you. And so there's a guaranteed amount of, you know, cash coming in and a certain amount of overhead that can be funded based on that. So what are some of the factors that Jim Wooster looks for when he is evaluating an RMR contract to either borrow against or purchase outright? Severability is one of the big things. Now, these aren't in any order, okay? So don't assume that these are in any order. And in fact, I'm not, you know, trying to speak on his behalf. This is just some stuff we learned from him. But severability was the one that surprised me the most. Maybe that's the one that I put at the top. The key is that you want to be able to really manage that agreement, manage that customer. It's really who owns the customer that matters. And so if you guys are in a situation where, say, for example, you're selling hosted access control, and you have a contract that is three-way between you, your hosting provider, and the end user, who really owns that contract? At the end of the day, there's equipment installed that has to work with whatever back-end infrastructure is available. And there is a certain degree of dependability on that manufacturer. And typically, those contracts tend to be drafted by who the manufacturer's attorney. So in most cases, if you have a three-party agreement, that could be a deal breaker, or it will vastly reduce the value of that contract. You should be able to take a contract, and if another dealer or integrator, such as yourself, decides to buy it, for example, they should be able to take over whatever piece of that business is happening. And it should be something that they can do what they want with. Or they can, if it's video monitoring, for example, they should be able to take that video monitoring contract from the customer and be able to own all of the aspects of that agreement. And once their term with, you know, us or whatever monitoring center you utilize ends, they should be able to do what they want with that contract, place the business where they want to. So if you have a company that has their own monitoring center that wants to buy your sort of wholesale monitoring business in a way, you're the retail end of a wholesale business, they should be able to take over and assume the responsibilities of that contract. That's what they're looking for. So along with severability, I think it's like assumability is something else to consider. Also, obviously, your liability and risk. We're in a risky business. You know, whether it's life safety or security, that you specialize in, we're in a risky business. So the key is that we need to make sure that the appropriate limitations are set to liability conditions, that there are protections. So if the internet goes down, if power goes out, if certain things happen, and for whatever reason we're not able to get those alarms, we should not be held liable. If there's a hurricane and it floods the system and looters come by and steal some of the property and assets, that's something that, you know, acts of God we can't handle. So there's certain areas where it's important to make sure you have that limited liability. Another factor is the gross margin and or like the cost of sales formula for that service. So obviously you want to maximize your margins as much as you can. So for instance, in the area of managed access control, it's generally in your best interest to handle the management of the database on behalf of your customer versus having that be something you sub out. Now, obviously, we offer a whole managed access control solution. However, I just want to be clear that if you can be the ones doing the work, your margins will be higher. You're going to have to finance your own overhead and make sure that you're covering your bases as far as the labor it requires to do it. But beyond that, it maximizes your margin. So think about ways you can do that. Also, we have payment terms and the length of a contract and what happens when that contract is expired. Does it auto-renew for another year? Does it go from month to month? Is there even a clause in there that has how much notice somebody needs to give you before they can cancel their subscription? You know, things like that. So those are the areas that are key. Now, Jim Looster is not an attorney, I don't believe. However, there are several attorneys that can assist you. Les Gold and Dennis Stern are a couple that come to mind. You know, Ken Kirschenbaum has an amazing reputation in our business, and he really specializes on the area of alarm monitoring. However, there's a lot of principles and basic best practices that carry over from the alarm industry into really kind of this niche that we offer in video monitoring and things like that. So let's go ahead and go to the next topic here. When it's time to sell the company, what are the other factors? And why is having this RMR and this contracted RMR so important? You know, the reason I should say why I'm bringing this up so much is because, like I said before, lots of people are strategizing and making some decisions and asking questions and trying to get, you know, real basic answers in terms of how RMR works, which is great. The factor here that I'm talking about is the actual value of your company. So not just the contract, if you ever wanted to borrow against contracts or sell off contracts, which is a very common practice these days, but actually sell off your entire organization if you're ever looking to do that. If you don't have RMR, it's a heavy emphasis on your supply and demand in your area, how much competition do you have, you know, what kinds of margins have you been able to support, what kinds of projects. I mean, obviously there's a degree of your brand and reputation that goes into the sex company. However, one of the most important things is the way they value it is the factor of EBITDA. Okay, so typically you're looking at, you know, 5 to 8 to 10 times EBITDA for a company that's in sort of a contracted construction business. Now, when you actually have RMR, and how they value it is based on, again, the future revenue. Now, you still have that infrastructure, that backbone, that integration business with big projects and, you know, all of those wonderful assets that are yours that you claim today, the people, you know, all of that stuff that you have. So you still have that, and that is still something you can sell. But typically, the way deals are done when there's a company that has sort of an integration business and an RMR business is they split it up. They piece it out. Maybe you get one buyer for one part and a different buyer for a different part. Maybe they they purchase both, but the point I'm getting at is that any RMR you have is seen as sort of a separate silo. It's seen as a separate pot of gold that's valued completely in addition to your standard company valuation. Now, if you're selling to one buyer, they're going to obviously try to, get a better price by buying the whole thing, which is normal, and you're going to have fewer attorney fees and closing costs as a result of that because there's only one transaction instead of two. So it offsets some of that. But in general, what I'm getting at is that your RMR, anything you build on top of what you already have, is a gravy sale to what you already have. Okay, it's in addition to your meat and potatoes. Some experts that I highly recommend you contact if you're really strategizing or looking for advice and need just an unbiased opinion. Sandy Jones, who probably needs no introduction. She's a wonderful, wonderful lady. She's helped so many integration partners. She's really done a phenomenal job assisting, especially like PSA member types, just like you guys, most of you. And if you're not, you should be. Anyway, okay, so Bill Larrabee is another great resource. Bill Larrabee has a background much like Bill Bozeman, where he's actually been that entrepreneur. He's been in your shoes. He knows what it takes. He knows, how painful these processes can feel. And so he specializes in really assisting companies prepare for sale and getting them ready. One of the things that he shared with me, a quote, I guess I should quote him on, is he was saying, like, Sharon, so many of today's integrators are working to put food on the table today. They're working for their income. They're not working for their retirement. And I thought that was a very interesting perspective. And what are you working for? What is it that you're doing all this for? Are you doing it for today, or are you doing it for 10 years from now? And if you're doing it for a different purpose and you see something bigger than what you have now, you need to start making those investments and calling those shots and making those decisions now. And I just thought he summed it up very nicely with that very simple statement. The last name here is Barry Epstein, and his company name, I should have written this down, sorry, is Vertex Capital, I believe. Again, his name is Barry Epstein, and he is a guy who specializes in the transactions for the small to medium-sized integrator-type transactions. So probably where 80% of you guys would fit. Barry would be your size. Les Gold and Jeff Kessler and, those guys are awesome. But they do ADP kind of deals, very large merger-type deals. So, but however, Les is a big supporter of ours and of PSAs, and I believe that if you want to just, to meet him, go to PSA Tech. He should be there. All right. The last point that we need to cover today, and it looks like we've got about 9 minutes to do so, is building your future. So like we just talked about what Bill Larrabee was saying, is what are you doing for your future? What are you doing today that's going to make a dramatic change in the way you operate and how profitable you are in the future? Obviously, by adopting these principles and making sure you focus on the first thing we talked about and having the strongest contracts you can and building as many RMR sources as you can. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Offer a few different flavors, not just maintenance but also monitoring, or not just monitoring but also hosted services, some other additional kind of stream of income. But you're going to be getting, when you think about your future, you're not thinking about selling the company now. You're building it to support the next generation and the next generation after that. That steady state income you can provide to your successors. That ability to give them a nest egg that will continue to grow over time. That is not something that's a broken down bar that needs to be maintained and managed and everything's fallen apart and you can't borrow any money and it's a pain in the butt. Don't give them a pain. Give them something that's going to be a sure bet to propel them into the future. You need to see future generations bigger than your own. Think about how much further the generations following you can go versus how much you've done and how great that is, because that is great. But you can do more. And obviously just increase cash flow, having that additional money coming in. What can you do when you have that additional money coming in? You can fund growth efforts. If you want to grow organically, it can allow you to expand into a new territory. If you want to purchase, another entity, that's what Jim Looster's finance company does, is they give people money today so they can use it to continue to grow their RMR tomorrow. And it allows you to borrow from yourself, in essence, to pay to build that empire that you're looking to build. You can fund your integration projects. If you guys have heard Bill Bozeman speak, you probably heard this story, so I apologize if it's redundant, but he talks a lot about how he used to borrow money from his alarm company to fund the integration side of his business. And that realization of always having that there. So if you wanted to go after some really competitive deals, the airport or something that, if I can just win this one, it's going to sell more for me. And it's going to cost you some skin. You won't be able to make as much as you normally would make. You're going to have to maybe fund the deal longer and get paid later or slower based on the size or scope of a project. And because of that, ordinarily it might be too hard. But if you have an RMR area that you can pull from, it can enable you to finance those larger projects. And then obviously thinking about the longer term valuation or sale of your business. Really thinking about, okay, I could sell my company today for $3 or maybe $5 million, but in 10 years, we should be able to sell for 10 times that. So as you're preparing your company for this, a couple of names I have listed here. Chris Peterson, who did the webinar for us a couple weeks ago. Excellent resource. And he has a diagnostic review process that he offers that really is exactly what you need if you're looking at these things. It allows you to figure out, but it's more specific to the sales engine of all of this, but at the end of the day, what is any of this infrastructure if you don't have sales coming in, right? So he can help make sure that you are in a position to make that sales machine generate and produce the output that you're looking for. And so by having him assist with that, it can just make sure that you're on the right track and get that third-party perspective. Donna Weisman, I listed from Susquehanna Bank. Not to borrow money from her, but her project financing program is huge. It is a big, big deal for you guys to sell these services, to get ready to do this. I mean, when you don't have the RMR to borrow against and you don't have the cash flow from your integration business necessarily to finance a new RMR division for yourself, project financing can be a way to give your customers that single monthly payment option that they need that goes so well and seamlessly with these services that we're selling, and use her program to get you where you need to be. So she is, an expert in the area of finance. Obviously, she's been doing it for, I think, not to date her or anything, but over a quarter of a century. So definitely leverage her as a resource. But the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, again, is just our sales call coming up in another 30 minutes or so, and just how important it is that if you can get some folks there to hear some of the success stories that we have and the things that we've sold over the last couple of months that are coming online and all the deals that we constructed last week. It's just a great way to learn. It's a great way to share. And really, what salespeople need is that sense of competition. They want to be the one that wins. So they want the ball when you've got 3 seconds left and you're down. They want the ball. So give them the ball, and this is how you can show them what's happening when other people are taking that opportunity and initiative to make something happen. So with that, I want to thank you all for your time today. There is one thing actually I forgot about here that I wanted to share with you, and let me just zoom in a little bit. I can email this to any of you who are interested, but this is basically an example of the value of the RMR as you grow it. This chart is based on 3 years total. In year 1, selling 2 systems per month. In year 2, you sell 3 systems per month. In year 3, you sell 4 systems per month. The average, RMR per system, $500 a month, and the installation revenue per system obviously is probably slightly underestimated here if you're doing new installations, but to incentivize you and see how it could work if you chose to use a legacy system and just go back and sell to existing customers and not having to go after all new design opportunities, it makes sense. So that $20,000 helps average that out. But anyhow, you can see how this is quarterly. Okay, this is what the value that RMR is after each quarter to allow for the 3 years. After year 1, with that pace of selling 2 systems per month, you're going to increase the value of your company $8,000 and $400,000 dollars. So that's on top of the value of the rest of the company that you've already built. If you grow at that pace that listed by selling 1 more system per month, so another 3 systems over year 2, at the end of year 2, you're going to add close to $1 million of value to your company. The orange bars, I should explain, represent a RMR multiple of 36 times RMR. And the blue represent a slightly reduced 30 times RMR. There haven't been a whole lot of transactions done for video monitoring quite yet, but this gives you kind of a feel for a range that you should expect. After the 3rd year of selling 1 additional system per month, 4 systems per month, you can grow your company as much as $1.5 million or close to $2 million after 3 years. So is this too good to be true? It sounds like it. But that's the thing we were talking about earlier, is it takes extraordinary effort to produce extraordinary results. So are you going to do extraordinary work, or are you going to stick with what's ordinary? This is an example to help you visualize the percentage of the overall cash flow coming into your organization and how much of that becomes RMR over time. So this is still based on that same formula of 2 systems per month for year 1, 3 systems for year 2, and 4 systems per month for year 3. And your project revenue being $20,000 per each project. So you can see that these flat line blue lines are flat because you have to re-earn all of that revenue every single time you make a sale. But you can see how the RMR continues to increase with each sale. And not only that, but how after 3 years, you're looking at 1/3 or so of your revenue being from RMR. So think about that. All right, I want to, again, thank you all for your time today. I know how valuable it is, how busy we all are. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and don't hesitate to contact us should you have any questions about this material or other material that we've presented in the past. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll be talking to your sales folks here in about 30 minutes. Okay, bye-bye.